In this demonstration, I'll create a Kubernetes engine cluster. I'll deploy a load balance service to it. I'll scale that service, and we'll see what happens. First, let's use the GPC console to confirm that we have the APIs that we need. In the Products and Service menu, go down to API and Services, go to Library, and we're going to search for two services. The first one is Kubernetes. Engine API, that's the one I want to check. So if I click on that, I can see it's enabled. The next one I want to check is the container registry. If I click on it here, I can see it's also enabled. So I have all of the APIs I require for this lab. So let's open up Cloud Shell. For convenience, I'm going to define an environment variable that contains my preferred GCP zone. I'll now launch a Kubernetes cluster in that zone. This will take a couple of minutes to spin up. Now that our cluster has spun up, we can see the health checks have been performed, and we can see that we have our cluster in US Central 1. Now that our cluster is ready, let's check what version of Kubernetes it's running. And we are running 1.14. But you may see a later version. Remember, the Kubernetes cluster nodes are compute engine virtual machines. Let's go back to the GCP console and view them. In the Products and Service menu, scroll to Compute Engine and to VM Instances. And we click on this, we should be able to see our cluster nodes are here and here. Let's go back to the Cloud Shell, and we're going to run a simple ASP.NET application in our cluster. So the first thing we need to do is create that application. So we have a small file to lock in the version of .NET. We're going to disable our telemetry, and we're going to create a new ASP.core application. And again, this will take a couple of moments to spin up. Now that we've spun it up, we need to check that it's working correctly. So we're going to navigate to the correct folder, and we are going to run our application on localhost. And when this is running, we can check it in web preview. And we can see that we have ASP.NET running. We can close that link, and we can press Ctrl+C to finish this. Once we have verified our application is running, we can publish it. And now that our app is published, we can upload it to Container Registry. Let's create a Kubernetes cluster for our app. So we're going to set our dev shell project ID to our current project ID, and we are going to build our Docker container. Let's test that our Docker file works, our Docker application works. We can preview it on 8080 again, and we can see we're seeing the same application as before. Let's get to container ID. We can see here that our container ID is this. So what we're going to do is we're going to say Docker stop our container ID. It'll stop it for us. We're going to set the project using this command, and we're going to push our project to the container registry. Okay, now that we're in the registry, let's actually deploy it to a Kubernetes cluster. We're going to create a pod using that application. We're going to view the deployments. We can see we have one node running. Let's have a look at that actual pod. We can see it's been alive for 34 seconds. Let's expose our cluster to the internet. Now let's view the new service. We can see our services there. And it'll take a moment for our external IP address to run, so we run it again. Still waiting, we'll check back in a moment. So let's check back again. We see we've waited a little bit of time and we have our external IP address here. Now let's scale up our deployment to see if the load is rising. We're going to scale up to 3 nodes. Now let's check on our services. And we can see that we have our load balancer under .NET, and we also have our cluster IP. And that completes this lab.